You're listening to the Fan to Fan podcast, and today we're going to be talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ripoffs. That's right, we're going to be talking about Samurai Pizza Cats, Street Sharks, Battletoads, and more. Here we go. Welcome to the Fan to Fan podcast. This is your host, Bernie Gonzalez, and today we are talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ripoffs. Let's take a trip back in time. It's 1984, and you're in your local comic shop, surrounded by Marvel comics, including Secret Wars and the West Coast Avengers. You have DC comics like Swamp Thing and Teen Titans, and indie comics like Mr. X and Badger. And as you check out the new releases, you stumble upon one of only 3,000 copies of this self-published comic from Mirage Studios titled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You flip through the cheaper newsprint paper, at least compared to what Marvel and DC use, and you see that the creators, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, have cobbled together this magazine format single issue, paid for by their tax refund, that features 4 anthropomorphic turtles named Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo, who happen to be martial arts masters trained by their rat sensei, Splinter. And the issue you're holding is in black and white, so the only way you can tell which turtle is which is by the weapon they're holding. Leonardo has the katana sword, Donatello has his bow staff, Michelangelo has his nunchucks, and Raphael has a pair of sai. You follow this new indie series and find out that Eastman and Laird are really parroting 4 of the most popular comics of the 1980s. You have Marvel Comics' Daredevil, featuring a masked New York vigilante who uses his martial arts training to fight off the Hand, a group of ninjas with very sinister intentions. You have the New Mutants, an ensemble offshoot of the X-Men, populated by a group of teenage mutants. You have Dave Sims' Cerebus, that features an anthropomorphic aardvark. And Frank Miller's Ronin, with its New York locale, martial arts tone, and manga-inspired artwork. So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or TMNT, is a natural product of its time, its inspirations, its influences, and its look. But the story only begins with those initial comics. It's 1987, and you turn on the TV only to find that there is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon series. Very different in tone than the black and white indie comic. These 4 turtles are wisecracking, pizza-obsessed teenage superheroes that fight the forces of evil from their sewer hideout, each touting their signature weapon, but now they wear color-coded masks. Leonardo wears blue, Donatello is purple, Raphael wears red, Michelangelo wears orange. You sing along with the insanely catchy theme song written by successful television producer Chuck Lorre. And you crack a smile when they use phrases like bummer, dude, bogus, radical, far out, bodacious, and of course, Cowabunga! As they fight the evil Shredder, his Foot Clan of ninjas, and the newly introduced mutant baddies.
Bebop, rock steady, destroy them!
Oh, with great pleasure, Master Shredder. Jump for it!
You idiots!
The mutation didn't up their IQs any.
It was a generational touchstone, a memory every kid who grew up in the 80s and 90s shares on some level. And boy, it was hard to miss. From 1988 to 1997, if you were younger, a member of Generation Y, for example, you remember going down the aisles of your local Toys R Us or KB Toys or Child World, and sitting on those pegs were dozens, hundreds of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figures.
From Playmate!
Of course, you had Leo, Don, Raph, and Mike. And then there was April O'Neil, Shredder, Foot Soldiers, and you could never buy just one, Bebop, Rocksteady, and Splinter. And then there were all the other TMNT heroes, Casey Jones, Usagi Yojimbo, and then the villains, Krang, Baxter Stockman, his Mousers, which you could never buy just one, the Rat King, Leatherhead, Slash, Ace Duck, and then there was...
What's going on here? It's the turtles giving the old foot soldiers the boot with their latest invention, the cheapskate.
Well, dude's on a roll.
And look, in the sky, it's a bird, it's a jet. No, it's the Turtle Trooper parachute.
Sorry to drop in without calling.
Bring in the knuckleheads. Uh-oh, those attack and grab foot machines look like real trouble for the green guy.
Whoa, getting a little carried away.
There were the vehicles, the turtle blimp, the party wagon, the turtle trooper, the turtle copter, the cheapskate, the knucklehead, and the foot cruiser. We can't forget the playsets, the sewer, and the technodrome. Then you had all the variations. Donatello, the undercover turtle, Raphael, the space cadet, Leo, the sewer samurai, Michelangelo, the sewer surfer. Then there were the sports, mutant military, rock and roll, wacky Wild West, and yes, even Star Trek turtles. They were at your birthday on a plate or on a party decoration. Hopefully they were waiting for you under a tree on Christmas morning, a gift for getting good grades, or at the end of an impromptu shopping spree because your parents finally gave in to your constant begging and pleading, or because you actually finished your chores. And if you were a card-carrying member of Generation X, baby boomers that grew up on Star Wars and G.I. Joe, the TMNT phenomenon was either an opportunity to buy the boys you never had as a kid, allowing you to collect them in the same way that your, 8-year-old self might have collected He-Man or Transformers, or it was an opportunity to jump on the 90s speculative wave, and like all those limited edition comics at the comic shop, you kept these toys sealed in mint condition in boxes or Tupperware containers in an attic or a basement, so one day they'd pay for your new house, your kid's college education, or that new hip your doctor insists you need to have before it gets any worse. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were everywhere, and I can't forget to mention the 1989 Konami multiplayer arcade game, some of the most memorable, colorful 2D sprites to ever grace at least my local arcade. If you could get 4 friends together and huddle elbow to elbow, you could team up just like Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello to fight the evil forces of Shredder in this fun, side-scrolling beat-em-up that rivaled Double Dragon or Golden Axe and would only cost you $0.25 a minute. At least that's the way I remember it, because I died 20 or 30 times every time I played the game as a kid, and fairly recently too.
Come and get 'em, Yell
When something succeeds, it's only natural that people are going to try and copy it. And if you have something like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles taking over toy stores, birthday parties, clothing, and just about every kind of merchandise you can imagine, it's not going to be long before the pretenders come out of the woodwork. First you had the Transformers, then came the GoBots. Glowworms opened the door for Betty Buddies. Photon was the cheaper knockoff of Laser Tag. And after the popularity of She-Ra came Golden Girl and the Guardians of the Gemstone, who most definitely did not rival the Princes of Power. So it's only natural that a TV or animation studio exec would go, lean on their talent to create a worthy knockoff to ride on the TMNT coattails and vie for a slice of that turtle merchandising empire pie. And did they ever? The key when you copy something is to find out what made the original so popular. So, with the help of the scientific method, you break down the individual parts, right? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were anthropomorphic animals with ironic names, full of extreme attitude and radical catchphrases, but still friendly. So if you're a TV or animation studio exec, you ask for that. So in this episode, I'm going to go over some of the TMNT knockoffs and highlight how they were similar, different, or just so outrageously unique from our famous turtle foursome.
Like they say, can't get too much of a good thing.
So we're going to get started with the Stone Protectors. The Stone Protectors were a line of action figures produced in 1992 by the Ace Novelty Toy Company. All of the figures were roughly 5 inches tall, and their heads were made of a soft, rubbery material with tall, synthetic hair sticking straight out of the top. So think a He-Man figure with troll hair, which makes sense because the Stone Protectors tapped into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle phenomenon and also the Troll Doll fad. So who were the Stone Protectors? Angus the Soldier, who was the brains of the group. Then you had Chester the Wrestler. He was the brawn. Then there was Clifford the Rock Climber, Maxwell the Accelerator, and they were led by Cornelius the Samurai. They weren't anthropomorphic animals, but they were full of radical rock personality as members of a band named the Rock Detectors. And no toy line would be complete without a baddie. In this case, it was Zoc, the evil leader, and Zink, the horrible hatchet man. The toy line had a second sports-themed series that also introduced 2 new villains, and then there were 4 vehicles, including the mortar-launching golf cart and the mow and surf attack scooter. In 1993, a short-lived cartoon series debuted based on the Stone Protectors toy line.
We're the Stone Protectors, now you know. Stone Protectors, our stones of power glow.
The cartoon revolved around Empress Opal, who split the legendary Great Crystal into 6 pieces to keep it away from the evil Zonc's hands. Zoc managed to capture 1 piece, but the other 5 pieces bonded with the future Stone Protectors to help Opal upset Zoc's schemes and spread a sentiment of peace and freedom with their music. Unfortunately, the Trolls could not continue their role because they only produced 13 episodes of the animated series, and even more unfortunate for the diehard Stone Protector fans out there, only 8 out of 13 episodes were released on VHS in 1994 by Family Home Entertainment.
Cataclysmic! That is truly cataclysmic!
Luckily, they did release more Stone Protectors merchandise, including a board game, a 4-issue comic book series released by Harvey Comics in 1993, and a side-scrolling beat-em-up Super NES game based on the property, and that was released in 1994.
That's us? We're the Stone Protectors? Hey, mind the hair!
Next up are the Samurai Pizza Cats. Samurai Pizza Cats were an animated television adaptation of Kyaru Ninden Taiendi, and I'm sure I screwed that up, so I apologize. And that was a Japanese anime series originally produced by Takanoko Studios. Saban, the good folks behind Digimon, Power Rangers, Big Bad Beetleborgs, and VR Troopers, they picked up the North American rights to the series, which originally aired in Japan from 1990 to 1991 for a total of 54 episodes. And in 1994, Saban produced an English adaptation of Samurai Pizza Cats for a total of 52 episodes that aired in syndication. It was also dubbed into French, German, Spanish, and Hebrew.
Samurai Pizza Cats.
Oh yeah! Who do you call when you want some pepperoni?
Samurai Pizza Cats.
Right on! They're stamping out crime and you know that ain't baloney.
The series is set in Little Tokyo, a mechanical city which fuses feudal Japanese culture with contemporary culture and is populated by cybernetic, anthropomorphic animals. The city is governed by Emperor Fred, but the real leadership of Little Tokyo is in the hands of his daughter, Princess Violet, and the city council. The council is headed by the ambitious Prime Minister Seymour the Big Cheese. He's a rat who constantly plots to overthrow the emperor. He is aided by 2 henchmen, Geriatric and Bad Bird, the leader of an army of ninja crows. Unknown to the Prime Minister, Council member Big Al Dente, the commander of the Palace Guard, enlists the services of Speedy Cerviche, Polyester, and Guido Anchovy, 3 cyborg cat samurai who work in the city's pizzeria, known collectively as the Samurai Pizza Cats. They are assigned to stop Big Cheese and his evil henchmen's plans to take over Little Tokyo. Samurai Pizza Cats aired in countries all over the world, and the English version has become a cult hit among anime fans due to its rapid-fire, wacky, Animaniacs-like comedic dialogue.
Those guys look as stupid as you 2 bird brains have looked lately.
If you want to see stupid, look in the mirror.
Don't think I didn't hear that.
They also broke the fourth wall and featured tons of pop culture references. Some of those references included Batcat, an obvious reference to Batman. General Catton is a reference to General George S. Patton. Spritz the Cat is a reference to Fritz the Cat. And then there are nods to Spider-Man and Gundam. Not only did the show jump on the TMNT coattails, it also parodied the tokusatsu, or toku, Japanese catch-all term for live-action sci-fi entertainment that uses live effects. So think people in rubber suits, made famous in Godzilla films and the Super Sentai genre, where you see 4 to 5 transforming heroes banding together to fight evil and armed with signature weapons and sometimes giant mecha. In pretty similar fashion, the Samurai Pizza Cats employed extra toppings, mega-up, tricoon armor made up of mechanical birds that attached to the cats to form jetpacks. As for merchandise, various toys and model kits were released in both Japan and Europe by Japanese toy maker and video game company Bandai. In 1991, Tecmo published a platform video game based on the original Japanese version of the Samurai Pizza Cats. The game was released for the Japanese Famicom, so it was only released in Japan, despite the series' popularity in the West. Last but not least, the English-dubbed version of the show was released on Blu-ray as Samurai Pizza Cats: The Complete Collection on January 19th of 2016. And if you hit up eBay, you will find countless animation cells from the cartoon series that can be had for as little as $15. Pretty great deal. We are going to move on to The Avenger Penguins. Avenger Penguins was an animated series that aired in 1993. The story revolves around 3 bike-riding penguins that inhabit Big City, uniting to protect the city and its citizens from the evil Caratarchus P. Doom, an insane and reclusive criminal scientist. Along the way, they hang out at Irv's garage, eat ice cream at a local shop, and get into it with other biker gangs infesting Big City, such as the Stink Brothers, a canine squad of Hell's Angels. The Penguins were led by Marlin, uncoordinated, brash, and more than willing to spit out the catchphrase, "Penguins, bike up!" He was voiced by Mike McShane. Actor, singer, comedian McShane appeared in the early 90s on the original British television show Whose Line Is It Anyway? He played Friar Tuck in 1991's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and he also appeared on Seinfeld and Frasier. Then there was Rocky, a large dim-witted penguin, and finally there was Bluey, a small penguin who wore his Kaiser helmet over his eyes all the time and spoke in a nearly indecipherable gibberish.
I like the sound of that.
The villainous Doom, also voiced by Mike McShane, was obviously patterned after Orson Welles. He would break the fourth wall and explain his sinister plans to rule the world. Doom's henchman was Harry Slime, who talks like Peter Lorre and is based on Harry Lime, a character from the movie The Third Man. The cartoon parodied James Bond, Star Trek, Star Wars, Richard Nixon, and John F. Kennedy. And it was originally going to be called Hell's Penguins, but it was renamed to avoid a negative audience response. Although the Avenger Penguins did not get a toy line, the entire series was released on a 3-disc DVD box set in March of 2006.
Anytime you need a hand, you can count on the Avenger Penguins.
Yeah, sure thing. Avenger Penguins.
So you may not remember the Avenger Penguins, but I'm pretty sure you may remember the Street Sharks. The Street Sharks began as a 1993 Mattel toy line starring crime-fighting half-man, half-sharks. They fight, they bite, they kick some serious fin, especially in the animated series created to promote the toys.
There's a new breed in the neighborhood. Some say they're just no good. Half shark, half man, fighting evil, that's the plan. Street Sharks. Street Sharks. Street Sharks.
The cartoon ran for 3 seasons with a total of 40 episodes. It was produced by DIC Entertainment and aired from 1994 to 1997. The story begins with a professor named Dr. Robert Bolton and his partner, Dr. Luther Paradigm. They create a machine known as the Gene Slammer, capable of changing aquatic animals into anthropomorphic hybrids by combining their DNA. In his attempt to prevent Paradigm from using this machine for personal power, Dr. Robert Bolton is transformed into this unseen monstrosity, but escapes. Paradigm gives Bolt's 4 rad, extreme, sports-loving teenage sons named John, Bobby, Coop, and Clint the likeness of 4 different sharks, resulting in the Street Sharks. So who are they? Well, John is transformed into Ripster, a great white shark who takes after his father and becomes the leader of the Street Sharks. Clint becomes a hammerhead named Jab. Bobby is mutated into a tiger shark named Streaks, with an X, of course. A rollerblade-wearing, level-headed, and self-proclaimed ladies' man, or shark. Coop becomes the Big Slamoo, a skateboarding whale shark who becomes the Team Strong Guy, or shark. And not to be outdone, Dr. Paradigm combines with piranha DNA and becomes Dr. Paranoid. And his henchmen were the CV-8s, a group of mutant sea creatures including Slobster, the lobster, Slash, the swordfish, Killamari, the anthropomorphic squid, Reptile, the electric eel, and Shrimp Louie. Over the show's 3 seasons, the Street Sharks fought some more villains and met some allies in their quest to keep Vision City safe from Dr. Paranoid and his dream to mutate everyone into fish people. The complete cartoon series was released in 2013 by Mill Creek Entertainment. In 1996, Archie Comics released a 3-issue comic book series based on the first 3 episodes of the Street Sharks cartoon series, and then they followed that up with a second 3-issue miniseries. And if you do a little YouTube searching, you'll find a young Vin Diesel wearing a leather vest and an epic shark tooth necklace showing off the Street Sharks action figures at a 1994 toy fair. Before he appeared in Saving Private Ryan or the Fast and the Furious movies, Diesel had hair and said lines like,
Sledge the Hammerhead loves to floor the competition with the flying headbutt. You got me? He's the leader of the Street Sharks. He's a great warrior. He's got the real shark skin, and his special power is the right-hand roundhouse punch. He sends the competition to a watery grave. Boom!
In the next segment, I'll talk about the extreme dinosaurs and the Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa. But in the meantime, remember you can find the Fan to Fan podcast at www.fanpodcast.com. Facebook, just search Fan to Fan Podcast. That's FAN, the number 2, FAN, or on Twitter at Fan to Fan Podcast. I'd love to hear from you, so reach out, send the message, and let me know what you think of the show. Thanks.
And now, on with the show.
So if you remember the Street Sharks, you likely remember the Extreme Dinosaurs. The Extreme Dinosaurs began as a Street Shark spin-off in 1997. The property began as a 1996 Mattel toy line, seemingly influenced by the popularity of Jurassic Park. Extreme Dinosaurs was an animated series that began airing in 1997 for a respectable 52-episode run. Originally called the Dino-Vengers, the toy line followed a group of college teens who turned into dinosaurs. The main toys were T-Bone, Bullseye, Spike, Stegs, and Hard Rock. The bad guys were Bad Rap, Hax, and Spidor. Mattel would later expand the toy line into Dino-Vision toys, where you could see through the dinosaur characters, giving you, well, dinosaur vision. The toys were a spin-off of the Street Sharks, another Mattel toy line that, as I covered earlier, was made into an animated series. Mattel also turned this prehistoric toy line into a cartoon series, changing the plot and renaming them the Extreme Dinosaurs, chock full of kid-friendly teeth, claws, muscles, and jaws.
Something's really rocking on planet number 3. Modern man's got prehistoric company. A colossal fossil fuel, unlike anything before, between the reckless raptors and the extreme dinosaurs. Extreme, extreme, extreme dinosaurs. Tails that snap like thunderclaps, talking, stalking, raptor traps. Extreme, extreme, extreme dinosaurs. The classic and Jurassic form. Extreme dinosaurs.
The series starred a Tyrannosaurus named T-Bone, who was leader of the Extreme Dinosaurs. Rather than sport a weapon, he had a signature move, the Saurian Stomp, that shook the ground like a controlled earthquake. There was a Triceratops named Spike, who becomes the team's martial arts expert and chef. A Stegosaurus named Stegs, with a Z at the end, of course, and he could curl his body into a destructive saw blade, using the plates on his back as a cutting edge. There was a pterodon named Bullseye, with a Z of course, who was lazy, given to impulse buying, and had an ear-splitting yell like X-Men's Banshee. Finally, there was an Ankylosaurus named Hard Rock, who came from an alternate reality to help the extreme dinosaurs fight off the raptors. Instead of returning to his home dimension, he joins the group, although he's a pacifist. He was voiced by actor Blue Man Kuma, who was also in multiple 90s live-action TV shows, including Mantis, Forever Knight, Street Justice, and 21 Jump Street. Rather than being college kids mutated into dinos, the extreme dinosaurs were transformed into super warriors by an interdimensional criminal named Angor Zardoc. They rebelled against the alien criminal and did battle with Argor's second group of warriors known as the Evil Raptors. The Velociraptors, or Raptors, were led by Bad Rap. He had a metal brace-like device attached to his mouth and, of course, a rocket launcher. Hax was the dim-witted raptor with implants on the backs of his wrists that produced green blades. His tail also was replaced with a blade that's capable of spinning like a drill. The brains of the raptors was Spidor, who carried a tank of various liquids released from the nozzles at his hands, tail, and mouth. In one episode, he even created the Cyberraptors, robotic versions of the raptors. The raptors' ultimate objective was to cause global warming by increasing the Earth's temperature in an effort to get rid of the hairless mammals and make life on Earth more comfortable for dinosaurs. I would tell you about the blue-skinned space elves, but let's be real, the stars of the cartoon were the dinosaurs, the extreme dinosaurs, and their extreme catchphrases like, "Let's fossilize them!" In one episode, they teamed up with the Street Sharks, and in another episode, the extreme dinosaurs had an actual honest-to-goodness crossover with Mulder and Scully from The X-Files. That episode was titled The Extreme Files, of course, and starts off with a plot completely out of a regular X-Files episode, seeing Mulder and Scully investigating a flight where all the passengers have disappeared. They eventually partner with the extreme dinosaurs to fight a psychic mind probe-wearing villain who, in hindsight, looks very close to the present-day Gillian Anderson. Here's one you may have forgotten, the Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa. The Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa were created by comic book writer and artist and toy designer Ryan Brown, known for his work on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In 1991, Hasbro Toys produced a series of 10 action figures and one vehicle.
Wild West Cowboys! Sheriff Carol Bull was cooking up a scheme, and his cowboys gang was looking real mean. But Lou Montana's always ready for trouble, and he stopped that sheriff when he quick draw dust. The good guys win. That's the code of the West. Wild West Cowboys come with everything you see here. Figures and iron horse, each sold separate.
In 1992, Archie Comics published the Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa 3-issue miniseries, and later that year, a cartoon series aired on ABC. It ran for 2 seasons, for a total of 26 episodes, and like many cartoons made during that time, the Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa dealt with mutating animals. In this case, a comet struck the late 19th century Western Plains, creating a miles-high mesa shrouded in clouds. Everything trapped on the top of the mesa was cowmetized by the light of the comet and evolved from the bovamoric state. Inspired by old tales of the Wild West, this new bovine community developed to the point where they emulated the era's way of life, including desperados and apathetic sheriffs. They even introduced steampunk and Wild West concepts in the series, adding horror and sci-fi elements.
They're the real cowboys standing up for law and order and living by the code of the West. On Moo Mesa!
The series focused on trying to keep justice in the frontier territory by a group of peacekeepers known as the Cowboys. The COW was short for Code of the West. Led by Marshall Boone Montana, the Cowboys also included the Dakota Dude and the Colorado Kid. Marshall Moo Montana and his deputies had their hands full with various outlaw and gangs that plagued the otherwise peaceful cowtown. Marshall Moo Montana had a gun that shot star badges and a horse named Cyclone. The Dakota Dude was the soft-spoken muscle of Montana's posse, whose trusty steed was named Rebel. And the third cowboy was the Colorado Kid, a self-proclaimed ladies' man with a horse ironically named Jezebel. The Cowboys faced off against a number of villains, including Mayor Oscar Bull Loney, the greedy and corrupt mayor of Cowtown in Moo Mesa. Sheriff Tara Bull, voiced by Joe Piscopo, used his sheriff's badge to conceal his evil intentions. He was aided by a few henchmen like Saddle Sore, an anthropomorphic scorpion, and Boot Hill Buzzard. Beyond the animated series, Konami released a coin-operated arcade game in 1992 based on the Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa. The game was a side-scrolling run-and-gun action game similar to Konami's previous Wild West-themed game called the Sunset Riders. And not only were the Cowboys a TMNT copycat, they also made their Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle universe debut when they teamed up with the Turtles in issue 21 of the Mirage Studios title Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Ninja Turtles aided the Cowboys in stopping Sheriff Tara Bull from stealing a magic crystal shard. Here's another TMNT copycat you might remember. The Biker Mice from Mars was an animated series created by Rick Unger that began airing in 1993 and lasted for 3 seasons, totaling 65 episodes. It followed 3 anthropomorphic mice motorcyclists who live on the planet Mars in a society that's very similar to our own, but has a more passionate love for motorsports. But when the evil Plutarchians destroy Mars, the mice escape to Earth on a spaceship and crash land in Chicago, specifically into the Quigley Field scoreboard. There they meet a charming female mechanic named Charlene Charlie Davidson and discover that the Plutarchians have come to Earth to steal its natural resources. Lucky for humankind, the mice decide to defend our planet from the evil Plutarchians in the hopes of one day being able to return back home to Mars. The vigilante biker mice were led by the logical, level-headed, ponytail-wearing Throttle, who would say lines like, "In this wild and woolly universe, there are 3 things you can count on: your brain, your bros, and your bike." He had bionic eyes and a leather vest. He was brought to life by voice actor and singer Rob Paulsen, who voiced over 250 voice characters, including Yakko Warner and Pinky from Pinky and the Brain. Then there was the eye patch-wearing Moto. He had a bionic arm that gave him great strength and, of course, also had a built-in laser cannon. He was the sensitive, tough guy of the group who had a motorcycle named Lil Hoss and was voiced by actor Dorian Harewood, who did work on other cartoons like The Tick, Pro Stars, and even voiced Shredder for 4 episodes in 1989. The third biker mice was Vinny. Instead of a chopper, Vinny rode a red sports bike and, as the wild one, yelled out, "What a rush!" on a regular basis. He had a metallic faceplate on one side of his face, and his bike had the best arsenal of the trio. He was voiced by Ian Zerling of Beverly Hills 90210 and Sharknado fame. In most episodes, the biker mice faced off against the evil Lawrence Limburger, a bloated alien from Plutarch who was masquerading as a human. His headquarters is in a very tall tower called Limburger Plaza, the evil base where he orders his right-hand man, Dr. Benjamin Boris Zachary Carbuncle, to use a transporter to bring powerful supervillains to Chicago to defeat the biker mice once and for all. There was the requisite bungling bad guy sidekick named Grease Pit, who was voiced by voice actor, stand-up comedian Brad Garrett, and he's worked on everything from Everyone Loves Raymond to the recent 2016 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie Out of the Shadows. And another Beverly Hills 902 alumni, Luke Perry, voiced Napoleon Bree, who was Limburger's chief Plutarchian rival from Detroit and spoke like Elmer Fudd. The Biker Mice from Mars returned to TV screens in 2006 for a 28-episode revival, which makes it unique compared to other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle copycats who took advantage of the turtle phenomenon and then disappeared from pop culture. The Biker Mice revival was largely influenced by the major toy line that was manufactured by Italian giant GP, who worked with creator Rick Unger. The new series aired on 4Kids TV on Fox, and was different from the 90s cartoon in that the biker mice fight the evil Catatonians, a cat-like race of creatures who desire the greatest prize on Mars known as the Regenerator. In the process of obtaining the device, they destroy it, leaving the biker mice to flee to Earth to build a new one. Limburger and Grease Pit also appear, along with a new female biker mouse named Carbine. As for merchandise, The first season of the cartoon has been released on DVD as a 2-disc set. However, the entire Biker Mice from Mars original series has not been collected and released. The 2006 cartoon was only ever released in the home video format in the UK, New Zealand, Australia, and Bulgaria, but even those countries didn't get the full episodes of the revival series.
Okay, bros, let's show them who we are. 3 of the baddest mamma jammers ever to ride. The Biker Mice from Mars are ready to rumble in this brand new DVD. Join Vinny, Moto, and Throttle on a mission to save their planet. The adventure begins. Own it on DVD now.
Marvel Comics published a 3-issue series of the Biker Mice from Mars in the early 1990s. Tiger Electronics released a handheld LCD game in 1993. And there was the Biker Mice from Mars video game released by Konami for the Super NES in 1994. In 2006, another Biker Mice from Mars video game was released for the Nintendo DS and the PS2. And just to prove the Biker Mice don't go down without a fight, a Biker Mice from Mars mobile game was released in 2015 for iOS and Android devices. In the game, the Biker Mice work to recapture the home planet of Mars by fighting off Plutarchian platoons of light infantry, squadrons of attack gliders, cavalry bikers, and divisions of armored Martian sand buggies. And let's not forget the toys. In 1994, a year after the original cartoon series began airing, Galoob released a Biker Mice from Mars toy line, including the trio of heroic biker mice on their respective motorcycles, the villainous Lawrence Limburger, and some of his henchmen. And to satisfy the young masses, Galoob also released the Biker Mice sports line. And then there was the Freedom Fighter series, followed by the Off-Road Bros series. And then there were the Biker Knights, and then the space-themed Astro Bros, a Super Bendables line, and finally a large Mega Mice line. Compared to some of the other TMNT-inspired cartoons, I think the Biker Mice remained popular because it was able to channel everything kids love about the Turtles. Anthropomorphic animals, fun names, bad guys being bad with wisecracking good guys being good, riding sweet, heavily armed, but still kid-friendly motorcycles, all with 90s guitar riffs playing in the background. That's a recipe for success that would have any kid's attention, well, at least for a few minutes.
This is living. Nothing to do but rocking and rolling and racing through the cosmos.
And now we'll move on from a trio of mice to a trio of anthropomorphic mutant toad warriors known as the Battletoads. The Battletoads emerged on the scene in 1991 as an NES video game by Rare, the company behind Donkey Kong Country, GoldenEye 007, Banjo-Kazooie Perfect Dark, and Conker's Bad Fur Day.
So today, we're gonna take a look at Battletoads. Rocket! That it is, I mean, they got Psycho Pigs and Turbo Thwacking, and with kick fighting, surfing, babe saving, how can you go wrong?
In the Battletoads game, you played as one of 3 toads named after skin conditions. Zitz was the calm and cool leader. He wore gauntlets that served as a weapon and a communications device. Rash was the class clown, the smallest of the toads, who wore sunglasses and had spiked knee pads. And then there was Pimple, the toad's muscle. Together, the Battletoads fought against the wicked Dark Queen and her forces. The game is well known for its level of difficulty, and I should know, in a slightly morbid personal experience that I will share, during the 1991 holiday season, my parents were nice enough to buy me the NES game Battletoads for Christmas. I was ecstatic. Since June, when it was first released, I'd heard from friends about how awesome the game was. I'd read everything about Battletoads, published in Nintendo Power and GamePro magazine. I was ready to play the game, but it wasn't December 25th yet, and I couldn't wait. At the same time, my uncle was incredibly sick and was very close to passing away. So as crazy as it may sound, my parents actually allowed my brother and I to wrap my own Christmas presents. Crazy, I know. And as my brother and I count down the days until Christmas, my uncle's health deteriorates until he ultimately passes away. So one day, my mother and father tell us they're heading off to the funeral and they're leaving us to our own devices. And I kid you not, the second the garage door closed, my brother and I scoured under the tree, grabbed the Battletoads, carefully removed it out of the packaging. In full disclosure, when we gift wrapped the game, we purposely wrapped it in a way that allowed us to remove it without anyone noticing, for the express purpose of playing the game whenever our parents were not around, and obviously well before December 25th. I know it sounds awful, but let me tell you, on Christmas morning, my parents saw me rip open the packaging, leaving no evidence behind, of course, pop the cartridge into the NES, and play through the first few levels like a video game wizard. If I've learned anything from this story, and if you've learned anything from this story, do not let your children wrap their own presents. All right, now back to the Battletoads. So the NES game does well enough to generate a half-hour animated television special produced by DIC Entertainment. It aired on the weekend of Thanksgiving in 1992 in an attempt to capitalize on the popularity of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Here we go with our battle cry. Battletoads, we gotta keep going, man. Get a T-bird in the sky. Battletoads, across the universe, now we're green and we're totally fine.
The interesting thing about the pilot is that the story was a prequel to the video game. And rather than the Toads just being alien amphibians, the half-hour special featured 3 junior high schoolers that are given the ability to transform into anthropomorphic toads with superhuman strength. The cartoon was adapted and written by David Wise, who worked on the Star Trek animated series, Transformers, the Batman animated series, He-Man, and Mighty Orbots. And it makes sense why they brought him in to work on Battletoads, because in 1987, Wise was asked to develop and write a 5-part animated television pilot based on this little-known independent comic called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Wise became one of the principal forces behind the reinvention of the darker-toned black and white Mirage title into this fun, bright, cheerful animated phenomenon, creating catchphrases like Cowabunga Dude and developing original characters like Krang and Rocksteady and Bebop. Wise worked on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon series for 10 years, writing and story editing over 100 episodes. Talk about the perfect person for the Battletoads job. However, only the pilot episode of the Battletoads made it to the airwaves. It was never picked up for a full animated series. But luckily for the Battletoads, they continue to do well in the video game world. There was the Tiger Electronics LCD game. There was a Game Boy version of the original. Then there was a follow-up to their original video game called Battle Maniacs, released in 1993 for the SNES and in 1994 for the Sega Master System. In 1993, there was a crossover video game with Double Dragon where Shadow Boss and the Dark Queen team up against the Toad Trio and the 2 Leo brothers, Billy and Jimmy. There was an arcade game in 1994 known as Super Battletoads, where the kid-friendly beat-em-up action escalated to this level where players could bloodily decapitate some of their enemies with some specific attacks, which makes sense in a way. Not only are the Battletoads influenced by the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they would also be going head-to-head in the arcade against the blockbuster that was Mortal Kombat. So if you can't beat them, join them. Unlike the Turtles, who had a merchandising empire, the Battletoads surprisingly only had 2 toy lines, including 1 series of posable figures of the Toad Trio and a second series with some bendable figures. You may not see Battletoads merchandise on the shelves, but it hasn't disappeared from our minds. In 2010, Game Informer magazine included Battletoads among 10 gaming franchises that deserved a revival. And in 2012, Forbes listed Battletoads as one of 5 video game franchises that needed to come back from the dead, including Chrono Trigger, Wonder Boys, Ghosts and Goblins, and Baldur's Gate. Moving on to a slightly lesser known TMNT copycat are the Road Rovers.
Barking, scratching, frisbee catching, presidential pets.
That's us!
Change into the canines who drive souped-up cars and jets.
Coming through!
Tilka sniffing, toilet sipping, soaring through the sky.
I like it.
Licking, drooling, quick reviewing, who says dogs can't fly?
Not me.
Speeding, crashing, fearless dashing, vehicles explode. Ooh. Chasing, racing down the road. Road Rovers!
The Road Rovers was a Warner Brothers animated series that followed the adventures of the Road Rovers, a team of 5 superpowered, crime-fighting anthropomorphic dogs. The show originally aired in 1996 and only ran for 13 episodes. The plot took place in New Mexico, where Professor Shepard uses his experimental trans-dogmifier technology, but With the technology now in the evil General Parvo's hands, Professor Shepard goes into his secret underground lab, uses his new transdogmifier technology on 5 strays, turning them into Kano Sapiens. Each of the 5 Road Rovers were different dog breeds and had their own personalities and special powers. First, there's Hunter, the easygoing leader with the power of super speed. Colleen DeCollie was the only female member of the group, and she specialized in martial arts. Exile was the team's muscle, and he also had heat and ice vision. Blitz was the comic relief. Then there was Shag, a massive white sheepdog who acted as the coward of the group, but could pull an assortment of items and weapons from his thick fur coat. And finally, there's Muzzle, a Rottweiler who sadly never gained humanoid form and was often used as the sort of final weapon against a larger group of enemies that proved too much for the Road Rovers to handle. Their most prominent villain was General Parvo, a half-human, half-feline creature with a cybernetic arm and leg. His assistant was a woman known as the Groomer, and his soldiers were the Kano mutants, brainwashed anthropomorphic dogs with no free will to act on their own, but they served as General Parvo's slave army. When they weren't yelling out phrases like, "Let's hit the road, Rovers," the walking and talking dogs were also the beloved pets of world leaders such as Queen Elizabeth II and President Bill Clinton. And like other Warner Brothers animation titles like Tiny Toon Adventures, Animaniacs, and Freakazoid, the Road Rovers had a huge emphasis on humor and comedy. But unlike some of the other TMNT ripoffs, the Road Rovers did not have aisles full of merchandise, only a Warner Brothers DVD release in 2015.
Let's roll!
Now it's time to hit the road. Road Rovers!
Speaking of those WB Kid shows, our next TMNT Copycat didn't originate from a toy line or comic books. Rather, it was in a Tiny Toon Adventures titled Mr. Popular's Rules of Cool that featured a short segment where Plucky Duck and Hampton Pig sit down to watch Plucky's favorite comic book TV show, The Immature Radioactive Slugs. It fit right in with all the TMNT Copycats, 4 mutated, totally radical, gnarly dudes, cowabunga homeboy slugs with nothing to lose, each featuring ironic names like Picasso, Warhol, Rockwell, and Grandma Moses. The main villain was the Iodizer, and it even had a catchy theme song.
We're immature, radioactive samurai slugs. We love to thrash criminals and slice and dice thugs.
We're totally radical, gnarly dudes. Cowabunga homeboys with nothing to lose.
Our arch enemies want us iodized, but they can't beat us cause we're merchandise.
Too bad the immature radioactive samurai slugs didn't get their own spin-off because they might have had a fighting chance. I'll conclude my conversation on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ripoffs in just a second. In the meantime, if you are listening on iTunes, please take a moment to rate and review. Just search for the Fan to Fan podcast, go under reviews, enter a star rating, or write a review if you have a second or two, and click send. That's how easy it is. I will greatly appreciate it. By the late 90s, after school and Saturday morning TV was filled with WB shows like Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain, Nickelodeon cartoons like Rocko's Modern Life and Hey Arnold, and live-action kids programming like Power Rangers and Sabrina the Teenage Witch. So with entertainment heads busy trying to copy some of those shows, the TMNT Copycats dropped off, but they didn't fully disappear. Cyborgs was first published by Vintage Comics in August of 1996 as a single-issue comic book created by the brothers Ken and Kirk Smith. The comic introduced us to the cyborgs, anthropomorphic pigs from the planet Stygor. Our heroes include Bushhog, Chop Suey, Stampede, Airboar, and Hog Kong. The boars are known as the Wild Pack, resistance rebels fighting against the Bytrons, the evil anthropomorphic bulls who conquered their world. The Bytrons' contingent are named the Renegades, and they're led by the villainous Rabid Fire, who corner the bulls and force them across the galaxy, where they crash land on a small planet called Earth. Lucky for the barely alive boars, a secret government organization named CORE, that stands for Cybernetic Organism Robotic Engineering, finds them and, using Earth and Stygor technology, rebuilds them into super-powered cyborg heroes named the Cyborgs. Not to be outdone, the Renegades were found by the evil android Stegorex, enemy of Core, who steals the cyborg technology to upgrade the Renegades with their own bionic superpowers, renaming the villains as Stag, or Cybernetic Technology Augmented Genetics. Now the stage is set for these cyborgs to protect mankind while also racing to find a way back home to their home planet. Unfortunately for the Smith brothers, their bionic boars didn't catch on. They never received their own animated series in the 90s, but they did get a toy line in 1997 by Imaginary Limits, with a Z at the end of course, that featured the 5 heroes, along with baddie Rapid Fire. Unfortunately, the figures didn't catch on either, and they quickly hit the clearance bin of your local KB Toys. In 2009, the Cyborgs were featured in a 5-episode CGI web series that introduced new boars like Old Fang and Airboar. Luckily for Cyborg fans, the series kept the motto that was on the cover of the original 1996 comic, "This Ain't the Three Little Pigs." The Cyborgs weren't the only anthropomorphic heroes to take a cue from the Turtles and appear in comics. Not to be outdone by the Cyborgs, there was Cyber Swine, released in 1995 by Issue 1 Comics, part machine, part cop, full bore, or basically RoboCop or RoboPork. In 1996, comic artist Ethan Van Sciver, who's been an artist on Green Lantern Rebirth, Green Lantern The Sinestro Corps War, and Flash Rebirth, he created Cyberfrog, a surly cybernetic amphibian hero who enjoys fried chicken, caffeine, and violence. And those were more recent creations. Back in the 80s, in the middle of the TMNT frenzy, we saw a slew of small press comics like, get ready here, Cold-Blooded Chameleon Commandos, Komodo and the Defiants, the Karate Creatures, Adult Thermonuclear Power Pachyderms, the Hard Rockin' Rabbits, the Geriatric Gangrene Jiu-Jitsu Gerbils, and the Naive Interdimensional Commando Koalas. And there were the preteen Dirty Jean Kung Fu Kangaroos by Underground Comics legend Lee Mars. Issue 1 of the Kangaroo comics actually had a cameo by the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Donatello, actually drawn by TMNT co-creator Peter Laird. There were also the adolescent radioactive Black Belt Hamsters, written by Don Chin and illustrated by the Max creator Sam Keith. The comic featured 4 hamsters that were sent into space, where they mutated into, of course, anthropomorphic hamsters. Upon their return to Earth, they're trained by Tibetan monks and given ironic names like Clint, Chuck, Jackie, and Bruce. I'm sure Clint Eastwood, Chuck Norris, Jackie Chan, and Bruce Lee were very honored. The original adolescent radioactive Black Belt Hamsters comic series was published in 1996 by Clicks Comics and ended in 1989 after 9 issues. And in 2007, there was actually a revival by Dynamite Entertainment where they introduced 2 new hamsters named Jean-Claude Van Damme and Lucy Lawless in a 4-part comic series.
Remember these guys?
Oh yeah, the frogs! They were mondo cool amigos.
And now let's go back to the folks that started it all. Not content with their fearsome turtle foursome taking over toy aisles and airwaves, the TMNT creators added the Punk Frogs to the Turtles universe in 1987. They first appeared in the cartoon series in the episode titled Invasion of the Punk Frogs.
Hey, remember how Krang sent that can of mutagen to the wrong place?
Yeah, and it turned those swamp frogs into punk frogs.
Using his sinister charm, the evil Shredder convinced them that he was the good guy and made the naive punk frogs his warriors. Rather than giving them names based on famous Renaissance-era artists, Shredder decided to name them after some of history's famous and infamous conquerors and dictators. Attila the Frog is named after Attila the Hun, and his signature weapon was a ball and chain. He was voiced by stand-up comedian and voice actor Maurice LaMarche, best known for voicing the Brain in Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain. He also worked on a number of animated series, such as Futurama, The Simpsons, and Extreme Ghostbusters. Then you had Genghis Frog. His weapon of choice was an axe, and he was voiced by Jim Cummings, who was also the voice behind Darkwing Duck and Dr. Robotnik from Sonic the Hedgehog. Then there was Napoleon Bonafrog, named after Napoleon Bonaparte, and he wielded a whip. He was voiced by Pat Fraley, who also did the voice for other TMNT characters like Krang, Casey Jones, and Baxter Stockman. Finally, there was Rasputin the Mad Frog, named after Grigory Rasputin. He used a bow and arrow and even employed a few trick arrows like Hawkeye or Green Arrow. In one episode, he actually has a flash grenade type arrow to blind his opponents. He was voiced by Nicholas Omana, who worked on DuckTales, various World of Warcraft video games, and even narrated the E! True Hollywood story for Welcome Back, Kotter. So Shredder takes his mutated amphibians and convinces them the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are the real bad guys. But when the anti-turtle squad, led by Captain Hoffman, captures the mutant frogs, the turtles are the ones that actually rescue them. The turtles take the frogs back to Splinter, who sets the record straight. The punk frogs trust their animal instincts, side with Splinter and the turtles, and renounce the Shredder, and eventually help the turtles capture the Shredder before returning to the Everglades. The punk frogs appeared in a few episodes of the 80s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, including an episode that featured another Florida native mutant named Leatherhead.
No use skedaddling, frogs. You don't be escaping from old Leatherhead.
Faster, fellas! He's right on our tails! But that's impossible! We lost them things when we was itty-bitty tadpoles! It's just a figure of speech, Genghis!
The frogs each had a unique attitude, similar to the turtles. They wore Hawaiian shirts and had southern accents, so they were more Louisiana Surfer than punk. And to make sure no one mistook them for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the punk frogs did not like pizza. They appeared in subsequent TMNT cartoons, but with a different origin and a different look. And unfortunately for Attila and Rasputin, Napoleon and Genghis Frog were the only two of the punk frogs to receive plastic immortality and be made into action figures.
I wonder, whatever happened to the frogs?
Well, they're probably having a truly bodacious time in those peaceful Florida swamps.
If any of these TMNT ripoffs don't sound familiar, I'll get even more esoteric. But in order to do that, I'm going to move away from the world of comics back to the world of video games. In the early 90s, Active Technologies pitched their groundbreaking new product, the Active 52, which was an unlicensed multi-cart video game compilation developed for the NES and the Sega Genesis. The NES version was released in 1991, followed by the Genesis version in 1993. Action 52 consisted of 52 new and original games, mostly scrolling shooters and platformers. It was priced at $199 or less than $4 for each game, and it is notorious among gamers for the poor quality of games. But one of the more notable games is the Cheetah Men, which was Active 52's attempt at creating a franchise similar to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Here's the plot. Mad scientist Dr. Morbius kills a mother cheetah while on safari in Africa and then takes her 3 cubs for his own genetic research. Subject to his experiments, the cubs grow into half cheetah, half human creatures. Once they learn of Dr. Morbius's evil plans, they turn on him, and in turn, he creates an army of half-animal humans, known as the Subhumans, to stop the Cheetah Men once and for all. The Cheetah Men are given ironic names derived from mythology. We have Apollo, leader of the Cheetah Men, whose signature weapon is a crossbow. Then there's Hercules, the pacifist who refuses to use a weapon but has super strength. And finally, there's martial artist Ares, who uses 2 wooden sticks. The heroic anthropomorphic cheetahs face off against Dr. Morbius's animal henchmen, including the man-ape, Scavenger the vulture, hyena, and the white rhino. Along with the notorious video game, there was also a 12-page comic book providing the Cheetah Men's backstory that was packaged along with the Action 52 game cartridge, and I highly encourage you to Google image search the Cheetah Men comic. It is amazing.
Well, it looks like our job here is done.
All you have to do is look at recent TV show revivals and movie remakes to see that nostalgia is stronger than ever. And decades after their release, the Turtles are still influencing a new wave of imitators. And with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the airwaves, thanks to an updated Nickelodeon cartoon, and on the big screen with 2 rebooted movies, and in toy aisles, and on lunchboxes, on backpacks, and countless birthday party decorations, I'm sure we haven't seen the last anthropomorphic animal knockout spoof or parody. That's it for this episode. Tune in next time for more fan-to-fan conversations on the Fan to Fan podcast. Thanks for listening.
Steady. You're among friends. I've dehypnotized you. Good work. What next?